What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I hope you like this video. This is your review for Black Cake Season 1, Episode 3. Now, this episode was a hard episode for me to get through because I have read the book, and I kind of knew what it is. I felt like I knew what they were covering in this episode, and so it was a little hard for me, but we're going to get through it, okay? So this episode is titled Eleanor. So this is when Covey went from being Covey to Coventina Brown, and now she is Eleanor. We see her wake up at the hospital, and they think that she is Eleanor because she had Eleanor's purse or documents, and somehow or another they thought she was Eleanor instead of Covey. So Covey is the person that they thought buried, which is the reason why everybody back at the island thought Covey had died. And Ellie is now Covey, and so she assumes her identity, and everybody of course thinks that she's a nurse and so forth. She's got a really bad gash on her leg, and they told her you can't leave the hospital until you can walk to the mirror and back without stopping, pausing. And so she makes it her business to get out that hospital as fast as possible because I'm sure she thought them ghosts were going to be on her tail, that somebody was going to come looking, even though her family think that she's deceased and Eleanor didn't have any family. You just don't want to be sitting there like a sitting duck if the wrong person come through and recognize you or recognize her or pictures in the paper or anything along those lines, right? So the nurse at the hospital, because she thinks that she's a nurse, was like, I can help you out. You know, I found a place for you. You know, we look out for each other. So she gets she gets a room to rent. And now she has to find a job. And, you know, she's applying for like receptionist jobs and things like that. And, you know, first they're saying, oh, you're too qualified. Then they're like, well, you look like you still hurt. You know, you look like you're not well. You know, then, you know, people are like, well, you just want sympathy because you were in the train wreck. Like, you know, no sympathy here. And then, of course, there's good old fashioned racism, right? So she was having a hard time finding a job, and she was using up all her savings. So she finally went in and applied for a janitor's position. And the guy that interviewed her was like, first of all, I mean, I know who you are from the train, you know, sorry about that. And why are you applying for a janitor's position? And she was like, well, won't nobody hire me? You know, like I've been, you know, well, no, she didn't say that. But she was like, listen, I need a job. Like, I need a job. And so he tells her, listen, you are overqualified to be a janitor. I'm going to go ahead and hire you as a bookkeeper assistant. And, you know, you can start that job tomorrow. So she shows up. She's excited. She pulls, you know, a dress out. Now, as soon as she pulled that dress out, I said, that dress is not appropriate for an office in the 1960s. Okay? It's borderline appropriate in today's office, but certainly not in the 1960s. You know, it was a little low cut, and, you know, it was like hot pink. And of course, she ain't know no better. I mean, the girl was, 19 years old at this point? She ain't know no better. So she shows up for her first day at the job. First of all, you know, she's the only colored girl in the room. And then she shows up looking like, you know, with the low cut dress. And then she finds out that, girl, this job didn't even exist until my boss decided that we needed a bookkeeper's assistant. So honestly, I don't even know what I'm supposed to tell you to do because, girl, this is a job he made up. So, of course, the rest of these white women are looking at her side-eye, and I'm sure they're assuming the worst, that she's just like, you know, somebody he either messing with or trying to get with, right? And, you know, they don't really have no respect for her. You know, they make fun of her outfit and all those things. And so, you know, after the first day, she stays late and all of that. And she comes back in the next day, and, of course, she put on something. The next day, she's much more appropriately dressed. And they tell her, they say, listen, you can stay as late as you want. You can, you know, you can put on the right outfits. But at the end of the day, girl, like, you still are just somebody that is here because of charity. Like, you are a charity case. And so nobody here is really respecting you. Nobody here is really thinking nothing about all of that. Like, you're a charity. So she's determined to prove that she can do the job, because one of the things that helped her get the job was that she told the guy when he was interviewing her that she had done the books for her father's business. So she actually finds a mistake in the lady, one of the ladies, her numbers. And she takes it to her. She says, listen, I mean, I'm just trying to let you know I found this mistake. You may want to fix it. And she was like, girl, what you talking about? She was like, I don't have no mistakes. I know what I'm doing. I'm good at what I do. And you of all people are not going to sit here and tell me that I made a mistake. So she ends up going to the boss. Now, I don't know if that was the best move, Covey, but, you know, she was trying to do the right thing. And the boss was like, wait a minute, like, well, first of all, thank you. You know, I appreciate you finding the mistake, you know. And he basically goes to the girl and he reams her out, right? He reams her out. He was like, she tried to help you. You need to listen to her. And from now on, she's going to double check everything that you bring to me. She's going to be the person before you turn it in, you get her to double check it. So, of course, that did not make her any friends. Okay, that did not make her any friends in this situation. Now, like the next day at work, the boss cuts his hand really bad on a piece of equipment. Looked like an old-fashioned copy machine or something to that effect. And he's like, Eleanor, help me. First of all, she has a hard time responding to Eleanor because, of course, that's not her real name. So she has to remember that they talking to her when they calling Eleanor. Then when she sees his hand and it's all bloody, she immediately is like, oh my goodness. And he was like, okay, so somebody else jumped to his attention to help him with his hand and this, that, and the other. Okay. So we're going to put a pin in that. Let's flash back a little bit. We go back to the island. So we flash back to when Covey first met Gibbs, when Gibbs first moved to the island. And Covey is trying to let Bunny know, because Bunny's like, you just think about boys. And Covey was like, girl, he cute. And he been looking at me, you know. And then Covey says, well, look, old boy over there, he been kind of looking at you too, He's liked you since elementary school. You might need to, you might want to give him some attention. And she was like, whatever, he's not my type. And Covey was like, well, what is your type? Like, you don't even know what your type is because you won't give anybody a chance. And she was like, whatever. So she, just keeps getting on Covey about, about the fact that they need to train, and stop thinking about the boys. We need to stay focused and train. But her and Gibbs are flirting. And she ends up taking Gibbs and giving him a tour of the island, because Gibbs he just moved. And he, told the story about how his family basically got pushed off their land. I mean, they sold their land to the mining company, but basically they didn't have any choice. Come to find out, the mining company bought up the whole village, and all of them had to leave. And I'm sure they didn't get top dollar for their land and for their farm or whatever. But he said that he's, planning to go to university very soon. And he said, I'm not going to be here that long. And she was like, oh, well, it's a shame that you're not going to be here that long. And he was like, well, it's a good thing it's a small island. So we see them, dating and flirting and all that kind of stuff. So we get a backstory to see how close they had gotten and how long they had been, dating. And they keep giving us flashbacks to the actual wedding, right? And we keep getting flashbacks to the wedding. And we see where Clarence had leaned over to Covey and let Covey know, like, I know you've been running around this island with that Gibbs boy, but he's gone. Don't worry about him. He's dead to you now. Well, just at that moment, we not flashback, but they show us the outside of the wedding, and Gibbs was at the wedding. He did see the wedding happen, but he was outside when Clarence collapsed. So that leads us to believe that he probably wasn't the one that poisoned Clarence, because he didn't get anywhere close to the food or the drink or anything. He just was out there and he saw what happened. Now, we left off. Now, flashing back to Bunny and Coventina, Covey, as they're walking. And finally, Bunny lets Covey know, look, girl, I know that none of these guys are my type because I don't like guys. And she was like, and she tells Covey, I'm in love with you. And Covey was like, girl, you can't be saying that. Like, that could get you killed. Like, you can't be running around saying that. And Bunny was a little hurt. You could see that it was hurting her eyes. And Covey said, listen, you are my best friend. And that ain't never going to change. But, first of all, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Second of all, that is something that could get you hurt. Like, that's not something that's cool. And she said, it doesn't bother me, but the rules, right? And she says, so you can't say that again. And Bunny was like, so you want me to not be true to who I am? She was like, I'm just trying to protect you. I'm just trying to keep you protected. And so you see that, I think Bunny definitely understands that. And you see that Bunny gets it. But I'm sure it was hurtful. I'm sure it was hurtful to Bunny. But we see where Bunny, confirmed it. And that also sort of made me think back to the last episode where Bunny's father was talking to Covey's father and said, listen, a lot of people on the island are talking about how close Bunny and Covey were, and you know how dangerous that could be. Now, at the time, I was thinking that they were saying that it could be dangerous because people might think that Bunny knows where Covey is, or Bunny has something to do with what happened to Clarence. But now I see what the father's fear was. And maybe on some level, the father might have felt like his daughter, might have, had inclinations, as well. And again, it seems like that could have been very dangerous. We know that even still in Jamaica, that homosexuality is very, very much frowned upon. So, they touch on a little bit of everything, a little bit of everything. So, back to Eleanor. So, Eleanor's boss, he sort of, she's in his office one night, and he says to her, he said, listen, you're not a nurse, right? Like, you lied. You're not a nurse. And she was like, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? She said, I was just in shock. He said, no. He said, even with you being in shock, even with you having PTSD, at the end of the day, you are a trained nurse. Like, you recoiled at the sight of blood. He said, nah, you were not a nurse. And so she started crying, and she said, listen, I'm sorry. I padded my resume a little bit so I could get the job. I'll leave, but please don't tell anybody. Like, I'll leave quietly. And he was like, no, you're not fired. Just don't lie to me again. So when he sort of went off on the lady that Eleanor's, I guess it was her supervisor, about her not listening to Ellie, he invited Ellie to dinner and at first Ellie was a little nervous because she was like, look, I didn't know what to expect. I mean, he knew my secret and I couldn't really say no, but I'm not sure what this was all about, him inviting me to dinner. But then when she got to his house and his wife answered the door, it made her feel a little more comfortable. She was like, oh, okay, cool. This wasn't, anything nefarious. So they're having dinner and, his wife was like, oh my gosh, like I read about the train crash. I'm so sorry to hear about it. I'm so upset. She said, I really want to do something for you. I really want to have like a fundraiser or something for you. And her expression gave her away. She was like, oh no, you don't have to do that. The expression really gave her away. And she was like, she said, so she sort of played it off and said, why make it about me? Why not make it about, because she was saying that she wanted to bring more Caribbean people into Scotland because Scotland was so, one-dimensional and they wanted to be more inclusive of other cultures. And so she said, why not make that the fundraiser? Like, it doesn't have to be about me. It could just be about you want to be more inclusive of all, Caribbean people or whatever. And so she was like, oh, you're right. But the boss, he peeped it. He didn't miss it. He peeped it, right? So, I guess the next day at work, he calls her into the office and he said, listen, I've canceled the fundraiser. And she was like, oh no, like, why would you do that? And he said, I'm sure you're happy about it. And she was like, why would you say that? And he said, I saw your face. He's like, you're still not telling me the truth. Like, you're running from something. What is it? He said, you looked terrified. And so, again, she started crying again. And, she was like, look, I'll leave. Like, just forget it. I'm out of here. And he sexually assaults her. And the thing is, he knew, well, who was she going to tell? So when she comes back into the area where the rest of the women, it was obvious. Like, you could see the look on all of their faces that they knew what had happened. And the woman, the supervisor, the woman that she had been, going back and forth with, She came into the bathroom and she was like, girl, I tried to warn you. Because she had told her, you're not special. Like, she had kind of told, she didn't come right out and say, stay away from him. He ain't ish. But she did sort of kind of give her a little bit of a warning. But it just came off as her being a hater, right? It just came off as her sort of hating. But she told her, she said, listen, I tried to tell you. She said, after my divorce, I'm a single mom and I'm trying to make ends meet. And he did the same thing to me. And Eleanor was like, well, how do you keep working here? Like, how do you keep working here? And she said, I got to take care of my family. Like, I got to take care of my son. Like, I got to do what I have to do. She said, I just get up every morning and I come in and I try to, make myself forget. And Ellie was like, but you don't forget. Like, you don't forget though, right? And she was like, look, I'm doing what I have to do. So Ellie leaves. She gets back to her room and, she's upset and all of the things. And then we see her walking into the ocean and she's talking about, swimming in the beach at Scotland and, and she starts thinking back and we pick up where we saw her dad walking into the water and trying to unalive himself. And Pearl actually saved him. Now, I'm going to do a live when all of this is over to tell you guys the differences between the book and the movie. But somebody asked me in my comments how big. There are subtle differences. So far, the only major difference that I would say so far from the book to the movie, they've changed some things with Benny's character. I want to wait and see how that totally fleshes out before I speak too much on that. But the biggest difference so far I've seen is that it was Eleanor's idea to move to Edinburgh. It wasn't Covey's idea. It was Ellie's. And I just thought that was interesting that they changed that and they made it Covey's idea. But other than that, it's just been little small differences. So like when her father tried to, walk into the ocean and end it, he was saved by a fisherman. Whereas in the show, Pearl saved him. Okay, so that's an example of some of the small differences. So Pearl saved him. And the two of them ended up having it out. Pearl was like, I'm leaving. I'm done. And he was like, what you mean? You gonna quit on me? He was like, how am I supposed to eat? First of all, sir, do you even have any money to pay her? Like, how's she been working there? And you ain't got no business no more. You don't have no family no more. Like, what you talking about? And she said, listen, I took this job for Matilda. That's his wife. She said, I stayed for Covey. But at this point, you have run off your family. You don't have any family. You don't have a job. You don't have a business. And at this point, I mean, you did that. Like, your drinking, your gambling is what ruined everything. It's what ruined the reason why your wife left you. It's the reason why your daughter ain't here no more. And it's the reason why your business has gone. So, like, there's nothing for me. There's nothing left for me here. Like, no, I'm good. I'm out. And so they, she basically, I'm sure she said everything to him that she'd been wanting to say to him all these years, right? But like she said, I was there for Covey. And as she's leaving, we see Lil Man's brothers following her. We also found out that they found another suspect, that another man, basically, the police have him in custody, that he's the one that actually poisoned Clarence. But nobody really believes that it was this guy. They really still believe that it was either Covey or her dad. So Lil Man's brothers are still lurking around. Ellie/Covey, she doesn't, perish in the water, obviously, but she decides that it's time for her to leave Scotland. She said, listen, England is dangerous. Going back to London is dangerous. However, in London, I can at least blend in. Here in Scotland, like, nobody looks like me. Like, I stand out like a sore thumb. At least when I go back, there's a whole Caribbean community that I can sort of blend back into. So we see her back on the train, going back to London. And we see her go down to the school. And as she walks up on University, there's a rally outside where people are protesting, the black kids are protesting for equal rights. Remember, it's the 1960s. The civil rights movement was global. It wasn't just here in the United States, right? And who is up on stage with a microphone in his hand giving a speech? Gibbs. And he sees her, and his face looks like he has seen a ghost. And she sees him, And that is where the episode ends with she's saying, you know, do I want to be seen or do I want to continue to stay hidden? And that is where the episode ends. So let me know what you guys think. I will talk to y'all later.